Head down. Welcome back to coverage of Grand Prix Memphis, round 14. Brian David Marshall here with Jake Van Lunen, and we are watching Grand Prix champion Matt Severa playing against Andrew Tenjum. Andrew Tenjum playing Grixis Energy. Matt Severa, he's only gone with one color. It's red, and he's got a Bomat Courier attacking on turn one.
It's exactly where you want to be. On the draw, maybe not quite exactly where you want to be, but...
So there's a Glint Sleeve Siphoner. That's going to get Andrew up to 2 energy. The first energy coming courtesy of that Ether Hub. And we're going to see Lightning Strike just get that out of the way, stick a second card under the Bomat Courier, and get in for 1. Again, doesn't always look impressive attacking for 1. Looks a lot less impressive now that there's a Whirler Virtuoso on the table with 5 energy.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why Grixis Energy performs so well early on in the standard format, is that it gets to play a card like Whirler Virtuoso that's really strong against a lot of the 1 toughness threats that Mono Red puts forth.
So a Braid takes down the Whirler Virtuoso, but Andrew makes a token, and Matt's not willing to trade for it.
And Matt not hitting a 3rd land drop. That's really important here because it means it's going to be difficult for him to empty out his hand, to put a Hazard online early, and it also means that he's just going to have difficulty, putting on the pressure that he needs against Grixis Energy deck that's playing pound for pound much more powerful cards than the mono red strategy.
Here is another Whirler Virtuoso for Andrew Tenjum. That means he's also going to be able to make another flyer here. And, Scrap Heap Scrounger was the play for Matt Severa, who is still scrounging for that 3rd land. All right, in come the flyers. Leaves the Whirler Virtuoso back.
And I like attacking here a lot from Andrew Tenjum. He recognizes that against this mono red deck, you really want to be turning the corner and racing as quickly as you possibly can be.
All right, a second Bomat Courier for Matt Severa. Now, Scrap Heap Scrounger, is that a card we see a lot in the mono red list, or is that one of the new ways that they've compensated for some of the cards that they've lost?
This is honestly the first time I've seen it out of a mono red deck. I've seen red-black decks that splash for returning that.
I'm going to assume there has to be some black splash in this deck list. We haven't gotten our deck list yet, have we?
We have not. But Unlicensed Disintegration often shows up alongside Scrap Heap Scrounger when you see that in these mono red strategies. It's usually 2 Unlicensed Disintegration and 4 Scrap Heap Scrounger is the black splash. And that deck actually has had a lot of success in some of the larger Magic Online tournaments.
All right, Andrew Tenjum still keeping that Whirler Virtuoso at home, but working away in the air with his Thopters.
Yeah, so it seems that Andrew may have missed an energy trigger somewhere or something.
And that's a shame.
It's a sad day for everybody. So Fanatical Firebrand here. Andrew Tenjum going to chump block the Whirler Virtuoso and throw it at one of these Thopter tokens. Card does a nice impression of Mog Fanatic. Great aggressive creature for these mono red decks that has found a home.
Maybe, yeah, I guess Mog Fanatic. That tapping can be a little frustrating. It's like one step even further away from being able to put damage on the stack and sacrifice it. They've just added one more complication. There you get a look at a thing of beauty, the Mog Fanatic. The original card. Definitely an homage to the original.
So I'm not
Matt
sure.
Severa has unlocked a 3rd land and that lets him deploy a on-crop Crasher.
And it looks like he did exert. I don't see the exert on the on-crop crasher, but maybe he didn't, and he put Andrew to the test. And
he might have been willing. Yeah, he might have been very willing to trade there. Everyone gets in. Andrew gets an energy. And he has 7 mana to work with here. All right, now the lands are showing up there. We definitely see the black splash there from at Severa. So mono red, perhaps a little bit of an exaggeration.
It seems that he definitely has the scrap heap scroungers. Maybe that's the only part of the splash. Could also see a couple copies of Unlicensed Integration in here.
You see Dragon Skull Summit.
Yeah, not too difficult of a splash to manage in this format.
How many opportunities do you get to splash in standard? Like what, you obviously have Evolving Wilds, you have the Dragon Skull Summit.
Yeah, in the mono red deck, you really don't want any of your lands to come into play untapped. So you really only want to play these summits. So perhaps he's not even playing any Unlicensed Integration in the main.
Okay, another on-crop crasher enters the battlefield, and Andrew Tenjum gets a little life back, and Vraskis contempts one of them, takes 3, gains 2. He's going to draw a card here with his Glint Sleeve Siphoner.
At this point, Andrew is just so far ahead. The Whirler Virtuosos and the extra cards off the Glint Sleeve Siphoner have really just put him in a position where there's very little Severa could do.
There was also a mana bottleneck from at Severa in terms of being able to deploy his cards. He's able to play everything now, but for multiple turns of the game, he was just stuck on 2 lands there.
Yeah, and it looked like he, on key turns where he needed to draw lands, was drawing Hazarets. So those were cards that not only were getting stranded in his hand because he wasn't able to cast them, but once he did find the lands to be able to cast those cards, there were other cards that were stranded in his hand that made it so the Hazaret didn't have the effect that it should have had on the battlefield. And I mean, he didn't hit his 4th land forever there.
So still haven't brought us our deck lists. I want to get a really good look at what Matt is doing there as far as the black splash. As you watch these players sideboard. There we get a smile out of Andrew Tenjum. At Severa, that's about as much emotion as he generally shows when he's in the feature match area.
Yeah, it's about accurate. Although, it's very rare for me to see him lose in the feature match area. There are some players who always seem to be winning, and then whenever we get to watch them in the booth, they really struggle. Matt Severa is not one of those players.
No, not at all. Matt seems like pretty even. Seems like probably that's the same expression you'd get from him playing at Friday Night Magic, playing a casual draft. Just, a little kind of smirk.
Yeah, and Matt Severa's been kind of a dark horse, doing reasonably well at GPs for a number of years at this point, but this year he's really kind of become one of the top guns of the game. He's broken into the top 25 players a few times. Just impressive stuff from Matt. And I'm surprised to not see him playing Mardu Vehicles, actually.
Yeah.
A deck that has served him very well over the last year and a half.
And a deck that, if you ever had any question about how much skill is involved with piloting it, you would put that question to rest watching him play that deck. Just played the deck, flawlessly. Really made it hum when we saw him playing it. Then you get a glimpse of Rich Hagon wandering by in the background. Not wandering back with deck lists, though, so not sure what's happening. Grumble, grumble. So what's the allure of this Grixis Energy deck to you, Jake?
So Grixis Energy was kind of the breakout standard deck in the beginning of this format. You get to play with a lot of the most powerful cards in the format. The deck is proactive and reactive at the same time. It's a mid-range deck that can be the aggressor when it needs to be and can be the more controlling deck when it needs to be also. It really does kind of everything. A big complaint I heard from a lot of people was that while it does everything, it doesn't do anything well. And coming into this tournament, there were a lot of people who thought that it was not a very good choice. But here we are. We're very deep in the tournament at this point. We see people like Andrew Tenjum. He's at 11-2. The last undefeated player in the room was playing Grixis Energy. This is a deck that is really proving itself to be one of the top decks on Standard here this weekend.
Now, we talked about that idea. You talked about that idea, a deck that can do a little of something, everything well. But let's just imagine you saw there's 3 things that you want to be doing generally with a deck, and you can find decks that do 2 things exceedingly well. Is that kind of what you're? When people talk about metagaming, they talk about finding the right deck for the tournament. It's finding that right deck that just is so strong in 2 areas that are going to match up well against the rest of the field, versus doing something where you're just like, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of everything, and then maybe after sideboarding, shore up. Is there some sort of deck selection process that goes on like that for you when you're choosing a deck for a tournament?
Yeah, see, I remember for a long time when it came to deck selection and deck construction, there was a school of thought where you wanted your deck to be this well-oiled machine that did what it does exceptionally well, and you didn't want cards that didn't work toward that same end goal. But in recent years, especially in a format like Standard, we've seen that simply playing the most powerful cards that are available in the format is a very good strategy to find success. And I think when you're looking at a deck like Grixis Energy, it's really going that route in terms of philosophy. They think to themselves, these are the cards in Standard that have been proven to be some of the most powerful spells, and if I play them alongside each other, I should be setting myself up pretty well.
All right, well, here we are. We're underway game 2. Matt Severa. He's got turn 2 Scrap Heap Scrounger.
And see, a card like Scrap Heap Scrounger, that can give a lot of headaches to many of the control decks in the format. But a deck like Grixis Energy has enough bodies of its own that can actually trump that card that it's not quite as big of an issue.
All right. Harness Lightning is going to take down the Scrap Heap Scrounger for now. They have a tendency to come back. See a basic swamp in hand for Matt Severa, and he uses that to play Pia Nalar. He's 2 for 1.
Yeah, it's the Matt Severa version of Whirler Virtuoso.
I mean, honestly, you're lucky if you get to make one Thopter most times anyway.
Yeah, Pia Nalar has a lot of play to it. Late game, it can be used as a mana sink. It can deal a lot of extra damage to the opponent. Oh, wow, and here we see Rekindling Phoenix. And this is one of the most exciting cards out of Rivals of Ixalan.
So I would call Matt Severa's deck nearly mono-red.
Yes.
And the only black it looks like is just that activation on Scrap Heap Scrounger. And he's got 7 black sources to do that with.
Yeah, he set himself up very nicely with this mana base to never really have issues finding the red mana that he needs. For example, if he only had 4 lands, he would have to have drawn all 3 swamps in his deck in order to not be able to play a card like Rekindling Phoenix on the 4th turn.
Okay. Here's Earthshaker Kenra. Says your Whirler Virtuoso can't block.
Andrew Tenjum, I imagine he will be making a Thopter here, and will likely be blocking the Earthshaker Kenra just to mitigate the most damage possible.
Sure, always scary, though, to trade there. And once you put it in the graveyard, then it just means it's going to come back.
That's true.
But that's what he does. It's a tomorrow problem. Meanwhile, Matt gets in for 7. And follows up with a Scrap Heap Scrounger.
And here we're really seeing the power of these red decks when they get to be on the play.
Yeah, and keep in mind with that, if Matt doesn't even need to get to 6 to make that Earthshaker Kenra valuable in the yard, he can just actually use his black mana to return the Scrap Heap Scrounger.
It's absolutely true.
So he does not even have to get 2 more land drops to make that card useful. And just attacks here into the face of 2 Whirler Virtuosos and a potential Thopter. Keeps Pia Nalar back. That's just a chump attack.
Yeah, just be running into a 2-3. It's obviously not something Matt wants to be doing. As it stands, though, the PNLR has quite a bit of value here. With the Scrap Heap Scroungers, Matt can sacrifice those in order to make it so that key creatures and managers cannot block. He can use that to pump up Scrap Heap Scroungers and or additional Thopters that he might create.
And there is Hazoret the Fervent.
Yeah, still 2 cards in hand here for Matt, so it was unable to attack this turn, but that's really going to put a lot of pressure on Andrew's mana on the following turn, and he could have a Vraska's Contempt for the Phoenix, or he could have one for the Hazoret, but there's no way that he could cast one on both on this turn, and that bodes very well for Severa.
Clearly needs more Swarm Intelligence.
Yes, if he had just a magical Swarm Intelligence in the battlefield, that would definitely help.
All right, Lightning Strike you. It did. There, like you said, you summoned it and it disappeared. It's a new coverage variant of Magic. We're going to put a card in the side and give it to the player in play. Lightning Strike. Attack. Return. Scrap Heap Scrounger. And now, as you mentioned, he sacrifices it to PNLR's ability and says your Whirl of Virtuoso cannot block.
Yeah, now
That's great.
Yeah, even if Andrew had a Vraska's Contempt to deal with the Phoenix, he would have been unable to chump block that Hazoret, and the game would end.
Wow. Yeah, Matt Severa with a slightly different take on this mono-red build, and really showing off some of the extra interplay he's able to get with his cards. That Scrap Heap Scrounger, PNLR, something that an interaction I'm sure he's very well familiar with from his Mardu vehicle repetitions.
Yeah, I think PNLR is a card that Matt Severa has probably used to greater success than just about any other human on the planet at this
same
point.
with Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Yeah.
So when you look at the sideboards, what are you thinking about here?
So Matt Severa post-board has access to Glorybringer, which is great in a matchup like this because it comes down, it deals with something. It can also, just deal a bunch of damage to the opponent.
How do you feel about Glorybringer on the draw versus on the play? Doesn't matter to you?
I think it does matter for certain. I think he may want it in both instances. I think, the mono-red player...
But different numbers, perhaps?
I think that's definitely possible. Another thing to note here is a card like Chandra, Torch of Defiance, which is reasonably strong in a matchup like this. That card, when you're playing against a deck that's playing cards like Vraska's Contempt, Matt's going to be ticking that down and killing something. Basically, when he plays that all the time. Whereas if he was playing against something like a green-red deck or something that didn't have access to a card like Vraska's Contempt, he would want to be playing the Chandra, and he could either tick up or tick down. So, if he's going to bring that in, he really wants to get value out of it immediately.
You bring in Chandra's Defeat against this deck?
I don't think so. I think your only target is Whirler Virtuoso, and there's just really not a high enough upside. Like, yes, you're only spending 1 mana to beat something that costs 3 mana, but if your opponent has a draw that does not include Whirler Virtuoso, as a mono red deck, you really cannot afford to have cards in your hand that don't do anything. And it's especially bad when you have a Hazoret and you're trying to empty out your hand and you have cards that are stuck in it.
How do you feel about destroying 6 energy for 1 mana? AK Dual Shot. This is a sideboard option for Matt Severa. He could kill 2 Thopter tokens for 1 mana, which is something that, Andrew will have invested a lot of literal energy into making.
Yeah, see, again, this is a little bit fringe where, it's good against Glintsleeve Siphoner, it's good against Whirler Virtuoso, but I don't think it's useful enough in enough situations for Matt to bring it in a matchup like this. I think that card is very strong when you're playing against some of these servo exhibition decks. And Matt Severa, he's from Madison. He's probably very familiar with some of the other decks that are doing well in this tournament that are playing servo exhibition, that are, playing Adorned Pouncer. And a card like Dual Shot against a deck that's playing, Adorn Pouncers and Servo Exhibitions and Legion's Landings. This card is a great 2-for-1. For 1 mana, you're dealing with 2 cards from your opponent and usually, 3 mana.
I gotta tell you, I think I'd be tempted to bring it in against Andrew. Just those, he's done so much, he gets so much value off those Siphoners, does so well with his, so much of his offense relies on those Thopters and defense for that matter. I think it'd be interesting, but obviously I don't know what he would take out. What do you like out of Andrew's side of the sideboarding?
So Andrew has Chandra's Defeat, which is definitely the big card he wants to be bringing in here. He also wants to be bringing in Magma Spray. I think Hour of Devastation is also a card that he might be thinking about as an answer to Hazoret. Essence Scatter, another card which is a very nice answer to both Rekindling Phoenix and Hazoret. So I'm not sure about some of the cards, but I think Hour of Devastation, it's a card that lets him catch up in situations where the red deck kind of just vomits its hand onto the table. It's a card that I would expect Andrew Tenjum to definitely bring in on the draw and maybe bring in on the play.
Five mana seems. Here's one of the things that's amazing to me about Magic. We're talking about sideboard options, and the idea it's like, okay, well, you could bring in this 1 mana instant that, on the other side, you're talking about bring in this 5 casting cost sorcery.
And I think an important thing to remember when sideboarding here is that, when we talk about a card like Dual Shot, that card in particular, it's a reactive card, and there are some matchups where you can use it proactively, and depending on their draws, that could happen here, but I think more often than not, that's going to be a card that Matt Severa would very much want if he was on the back foot in the matchup, and if he's on the back foot, he's likely not doing very well.
Right. Both players going down to 6 here.
And the red deck certainly mulligans much better than the other decks in the current standard format.
Why do you say that? Just because it's easier for you to get Hazoret online?
Well, obviously your hand empties faster for Hazoret. Your cards generally cost less mana. You only have 1 color, so you don't need your lands to line up correctly in your opening hand. There are a lot of things that lead the red deck to do better on 6 or even 5 cards than the other decks in the current standard format.
I see land. I see Bomat Courier from Matt Severa.
Yeah, it looks like there are... Is that 4 lands and 2 spells for Matt? Probably not particularly thrilled with that opener.
Oh, well, and not more thrilled than Andrew was. He's going down to 5 here.
And Andrew going down to 5 on the play here.
Oof.
And, mulliganing to 5, never really where you want to be, especially bad on the play because you don't get to get that extra card right away that you scried to the top.
And again, this is an elimination round for top 8 contention. So Andrew's going to need 5 pretty sweet cards here. Well, what are you going to draw up for him?
So I think if Andrew wants a winning 5-card hand here, what he really wants is to have 2 lands, a Fatal Pusher, a Magma Spray, and a Whirler Virtuoso, okay. And then any 5th card. If he's got those 4 starters, I think that he's probably feeling reasonable about his chances here, even though he went to 5 cards. So 1 mana removal spell plus Whirler Virtuoso is usually a recipe for success when you're playing against red.
All right. He is going to keep the 5, pushes a card to the bottom. Matt keeps his on top, and here we go. Bomat Courier, swing, stick a card away for a rainy day.
And we talked about Matt's hand perhaps leaving him with maybe too many lands, but Bomat Courier is a nice way to fix that problem.
Cash those in. All right, here's Harness Lightning. It's going to strand a 2nd card. Andrew waits until Bomat Courier attacks. And the trigger's on the stack.
You'll never know what it was. Maybe it was exactly what he needed.
Just get to catch a card in limbo. It's such a weird, rare magic effect, right? Okay, well, double Harness Lightning. You talked about Fatal Push or Magma Spray. Harness Lightning a little slower, but also has let him develop his energy reserves here, which are pretty important.
And now he has 4 energy, which means that Ether Hub is going to, be a painless City of Brass, and it could also mean that he, could make an extra Thopter when he casts a card like Whirler Virtuoso, which is a card we've talked about a lot.
So Hazard the Fervent came down for Matt Severa. Still plenty of cards in hand, but it looks like he's going to be able to get out from under them pretty quickly here. Certainly by the time the next turn rolls around.
Yeah, if he has a 2-mana spell, he can be attacking with the Hazoret right away.
Well, there's On-Crop Crasher. Can he figure out a way to get rid of one more of those cards? Nope. He's going to have to content himself with attacking for 3. And Vraska's Contempt is at the ready for Hazoret, for Andrew Tenjum. So he's really he's holding up nicely here on his 5-card hand.
Yeah, he's doing really well here. Matt Severa a bit flooded, and Andrew Tenjum taking advantage of that, only having 5 cards. But important to note that
he got a Magma Spray too, it looks like.
That's great. It's exactly what he needs.
There we go. Magma Spray for the Earthshaker Kenra. Wow. And a Chandra's defeat for the On-Crop Crasher. And has Andrew Tenjum turned the tide? Can he find any threat here to take advantage of this mana-flooded Matt Severa?
Yeah, it seems like he has turned the tide.
Here comes Whirler Virtuoso. It's going to get abraded before Andrew gets that 4th, 5th, and 6th energy, but Andrew doesn't want to make a token with the first 3.
Yeah, Andrew declined to make a token there.
Wow. Search for Escanta, though. And he's got a bunch of cards in his graveyard. Here comes Earthshaker Kenra. It's going to drop Andrew to 16.
And it looks like Andrew has turned the corner here, because this Search for Azcanta could be flipping into Azcanta the Sunken Ruin almost right away. And Matt Severa, we know the last card in his hand is just a land.
So Andrew's like, I kind of like this card on top of my deck, but it's also the 7th card too. Or is it 7th or 6th?
I think it's the 7th.
He really wants that Escanta. Wow. He really wants that Escanta the Sunken Ruin. He just put a Vraska's Contempt in his graveyard for it. And that's why. Yes. He actually just wanted the 5th mana so he could play the Scarab God. Oh, here's Hazoret.
And I imagine Andrew Tenjum's just going to take 5 here.
The irony! He's like, well, I really want to get the Scarab God, so let me get rid of this Vraska's Contempt. Oh, Henry couldn't have written this up.
Andrew still, though, at a comfortable 11 for his life total.
/9. He's going to take 2 from Hazard at the end of turn here. Oh,
that's true.
Andrew is going to be able to really stem the tide for a little while here. Here comes Whirler Virtuoso. Thanks to the Scarab God, it's going to get him some more energy. It's going to give him a 4/4. He's going to be able to make some Thopter tokens.
And that's a lot of chump blockers. Line up for this Hazoret. Hazoret, can still do damage by discarding cards, but if you're able to just block it indefinitely with Thopters, that's going to take a lot of the teeth out of that nasty, nasty animal. It's a jackal, right? Jackal God.
So Andrew starts attacking. Attacks into Earthshaker Kenra.
And Matt Severa blocks there, and you may be wondering why he's blocking at 19, but the main reason he's doing so is because this allows him to eternalize his Earthshaker Kenra on the following turn, and in eternalizing that Earthshaker Kenra, he is able to hide it from the Scarab God and prevent the Scarab God from using its activation.
Absolutely, and he also drops Andrew to 9. So now you see the eternalized Earthshaker Kenra coming in, and that's a lethal attack. But, Andrew does get to make a couple of Thopters here.
So we see a Thopter jumping in front of each of those there. Oh, and it looks like Andrew Tenjum had actually an Essence Scatter in his hand when he tapped out for that Scarab God too. So all the hazard answers. But the one-turn window where he was able to cast that Scarab God happened to be the turn that Hazard came off the top.
So he takes an on-crop crasher out of Matt's graveyard. Gets the Scry 2 here. Pushes both of them. One of them was a Supreme Will. Draws a card. Can he turn the corner? In order to cast the Scarab God, he needed to get a 7th card into his graveyard.
Yeah.
Puts the Vraska's Contempt there, and then Matt Severa rips a Hazoret off the top. Double irony, Andrew Tenjum's holding Essence Scatter as he's tapped out for the Scarab God. I mean, I'm not saying it was incorrect. It was just, an unfortunate timing of events there for him. Can he win from here? Looks like he's going to exert. No, he's just making sure that we see that it's a zombie.
I mean, he can certainly win from here. He needs to set things up so that he's in a winnable racing situation here. He's at 9. Just a somewhat reasonable life total. If he wants to chump block this Hazoret the Fervent and then take 4 from the Earthshaker Kenra, he would still live even through a pair of Hazoret activations.
He also has to find a way to win before Hazoret just throws enough cards at him.
And that's absolutely true also. It's more imagining that he did not have a 2-drop, so we're really seeing the power of Hazoret here. We're also seeing the power of Scarab God. This is an
Aether Sphere Harvester.
And that's going to be really good in this racing situation that we talked about.
Another holdover from Matt Severa's vehicular days.
We're currently seeing a battle between kind of the 2 most powerful cards in Standard right now, Hazoret the Fervent and the Scarab God. A lot of the people I talked to before this weekend said to themselves that they would not come to this tournament if they weren't playing one of those 2 cards.
Scarab God looks like he's competing on the show Chopped, or Beat Bobby Flay there. He's got an audience cheering him on. He's got some sort of cutting implement.
It's cutting some melons.
So that was a chump from Andrew Tenjum. He put his Orla Virtuoso in the path of Hazoret.
Andrew Tenjum will get a Scry, and this following turn really needs to find another Vraska's Contempt. Or he cast one earlier in the game on Hazoret, put one in his graveyard to flip that Escant to the Sunken Ruin.
How many creatures are left for Andrew to bring back? There's another. There's a Bomat Courier. There's an on-crop crasher. Not sure how many Andrew has in his graveyard.
So, are there more creatures? There's another on-crop crasher and a Bomat Courier to return here with the Scarab God, but that means that Andrew will not be able to use his mana to get rid of the Hazoret if he does draw an answer here.
Gets the Scry too.
And there we saw Andrew with that Essence Scatter in hand as an answer to another threat that Matt might have potentially drawn and played on the last turn. But Matt Severa, the Aether Sphere Harvester, able to dodge that narrow answer. One of the reasons why these vehicles are so powerful.
Andrew pushed both cards to the bottom, drew a fresh one. What is he looking for here? Vraska's Contempt, obviously.
Well, he's in a really interesting situation here because with the on-card crashers, he could exert both of them and attack for lethal, but the Ether Sphere Harvester can be activated and dodge those exert triggers. So if he does have a removal spell for the Harvester, he can just attack and win right now. He can make it so that Matt Severa is unable to block. The vehicle really does kind of put an interesting strain on Andrew Tenjum's plan here, because had it been anything other than a vehicle that Matt Severa played there, the pair of crashers would have been able to just attack for lethal by making Matt Severa's board unable to block.
15 minutes left in the round here. So Andrew takes 2 from Chandra's ability, from Hazard's ability at the end of Matt's turn. Matt took damage took 5 from the Scarab God. This game is very close.
Yeah, the game is very close, and Andrew again going to be in a situation where he needs to chump block this Hazaret. Matt just 1 card shy of being able to discard and finish Andrew off with that Hazaret, because the Ether Sphere Harvester would deal 3 points in the air. But as we discussed last turn, the Ether Sphere Harvester not being a creature at the stage where Andrew is declaring attackers is what's keeping Matt alive at this point.
Chump blocks with the on-crop crasher.
And now Matt in a situation where he's going to be the one forced to chump block.
So Bomet Courier gets reanimated. Scry 2 also deals 2 to Matt. So, Matt's down to 4 here.
And now this Ether Sphere Harvester, again, the lifelink coming into play here. But
Wow.
Matt Severa, I think it's over unless he has a removal spell, because Tenjum can attack, make it so the Earthshaker cannot block. Matt Severa could activate this Ether Sphere Harvester, but even if he blocks and gains a little bit of life, goes to 7, he's still going to be taking at least 8 damage, perhaps 9. But he could have an interactive spell, so really a tough decision here for Andrew.
So you think on board Matt is just dead here?
I believe Matt is just dead here. I believe an all-out attack from Andrew Tenjum would end this game.
So exert on-crop crasher. You say the Kenra can't block. Ether Sphere Harvester gets in the way of one of the creatures, and that's going to gain Matt life, which will get him to 7. But the worst case scenario, 2 creatures get through, and they both are able to do more than 7.
Correct.
Okay, let's see how that plays out. And there's the hand. Matt Severa extends the hand to Andrew Tenjum. Andrew Tenjum stays alive, 12-2. Matt Severa will, in all likelihood, not be getting another top 8 this weekend. His mono red deck fell just short. Grixis Energy takes the match win, goes to 12-2. Really, really exciting match. And by the way, worth noting, well played there by Andrew Tenjum. If you remember what I asked you at the beginning of the game, I was like, what does Andrew need to do to win this game since he's mulliganing to 5 on the play?
Yeah, it's a tough thing to do. But, his opponent got flooded. He drew a good sequence of cards.
Absolutely.
And he played really well and found the race math to do it.
Right, running removal spells there. Pretty early on, those 2 Harness Lightnings taking out much better creatures and also serving to smooth out the mana for Andrew Tenjum, who was relying on Ether Hub for his 3rd color there. And so he gained extra energy in each of those removal exchanges. And that helped him. You know what? Let's talk to Andrew and see what he has to say about it. Hey, Andrew, BDM here. I'm here with Jake Van Lunen. We just watched your match, and we were really nervous for you on the play, Game 3. Basically an elimination match, and you're going down to 5 cards. What's going through your head?
Yeah, I mean, my first two hands only had one land. Just got a mulligan. But when I mulligan to 5 like that, I'm not thinking about how unlucky I am or whatever. I'm just thinking about how am I going to win with these 5 cards. So my 5-card hand was good. It had 3 removal spells. So I just kept, and the removal spells did their job.
When you're going down to 5, what are you looking for? I mean, obviously you're looking for any hand that you're gonna be able to keep.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you looking for in terms of being able to enact some game plan where you're going to be able to interact with the red deck early on?
Well, so obviously cheap removal helps, but the thing is, with my deck, which in a lot of matchups I need a lot of mana to function, so I kind of need a hand. When I'm on 5 cards, I'm not going to be able to have 7 lands in play. That's just not realistic on 5 cards, so I would like to keep a hand that can function off 4 or 5 lands for the most part.
All right, well, tell us a little bit about why you chose this Grixis Energy deck for this tournament. It's looked really fun when we've watched you play it. You had an unfortunate match against Eric Froelich where you just kind of got ground out in the card advantage game, but this really very exciting comeback from a 5-card hand here. What was the thinking behind why you chose to play this deck?
So I did pretty much all my testing on Magic Online, and then one thing that skewed me towards this deck is that it has a really good mono-red matchup, and anyone who plays Magic Online knows that those leagues are just filled with mono-red. And I also tried like the blue-black or Sultai midrange deck, but I really liked the red removal spells and Whirler Virtuoso, specifically against mono-red. They helped a lot, especially Magma Spray with all the Eternalized creatures and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just a deck that has a lot of interaction, and it's good at being both the beatdown or the control. So I generally like to play mid-range decks like that.
Yeah, so one of the things I was really impressed with that you did in Game 3 was the ability to manipulate race math in order to win the match. When you flipped over your Search for Azcanta and you had to put the Vraska's Contempt in the graveyard, and then he drew the Hazoret on that specific turn that you cast the Scarab God, did you sink in your chair a little bit? Were you worried that might be the turning point of the game?
Yeah, it definitely could have been. I really tanked on the Vraska's Contempt, but I would need to draw exactly an untapped land off the top of my deck to be able to cast a Scarab God, and I knew that 100% I needed to cast the Scarab God that turn to be able to win. So I just had to bin the Vraska's Contempt, which felt horrible, but it allowed me to play a Scarab God. And Scarab God is surprisingly good. I guess not even surprisingly against Hazoret.
Yeah, nobody's surprised anymore.
Like I can keep chump blocking every turn, which is fine, especially because I had a Whirler Virtuoso in the graveyard, so that gave me at least one free chump blocker. But yeah, I kind of needed him to not to miss on his draw step for a few turns, which he did, and that allowed me to win that race.
All right, Andrew. Well, good job here in round 14. You got a little bit more work to do maybe today. We'll let you get to it. Hopefully we get to talk to you a couple more times before this whole tournament is over. Good luck the rest of the way.
All right, thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, that's really going to be my favorite moment from the tournament is him just sweating over. It's the 7th card that can go to his graveyard for Search for Azcanta. He really wants that land, but he also really, really wants that Vraska's Contempt that's on top of his library. It was a really fun decision to watch him sweat out, and it worked out for him in the end, and so great job by him.
I'd say that, for me, it was my 6th favorite moment of the tournament, and my first 5 favorite moments of the tournament were Primal Calamity, Primal Calamity, Primal Calamity, Primal Calamity, and Primal Calamity.
Fair. I am a victim of recent events, for sure. Okay, so we'll be back. We've got some more Magic. Marshall and Reed will be back next round as we continue on our march to a top 8. Oh, you know what? Before that, we're going to come back with a time walk. That took a while. I thought we were out of here, but we've got one more match to show you from this round. I'm not going anywhere. Sorry. Stay tuned.
Hello everyone, Rich Hagan here alongside Jacob Van Lunen. We are in Time Walk action here in round number 14. Ari Lax and Chris Mcmahon trying to get into the top 8, which 12 and 2 would put them into some kind of position, JVL. So to do. It's 9 monsters, it's Mono Black Aggro, and we're underway with Mono Black Aggro doing its first thing on turn 2.
So these decks are pretty interesting. Mono Black Aggro. First of all, I'd like to point out that Chris is a terrible human playing sleeves that would lead his opponent to believe he is playing a green deck when he is in fact playing a mono black deck.
Oh, clever. Clever.
But this is a very aggressive deck. One of the more exciting things this deck is able to do is play a Bone Picker for just 1 mana. And that's a 3-power creature for 1 mana that Chris can enact simply by trading off one of his other creatures.
Okay, so Glint Sleeve Siphoner against Servant of the Conduit is our opening gambit on both sides, except that Servant of the Conduit meets a Fatal Push. Go away. And it's copy number 2, but of the very foiled up version.
And Ari Lax, he is playing a Naya Monsters deck. This is similar to the red-green decks that we've seen quite a bit of both on Magic Online and here this weekend. But he's playing a lot of powerful white cards as well. He's playing cards like a Johnny Unyielding, a card that I was really hoping to see a lot of in Standard that I didn't get to see much of yet. So let's hope we get to watch 6-mana Planeswalker do its thing here on the battlefield.
Yeah, he was certainly talking quite a lot on social media about implacable death lizards.
We hear Glint Sleeve Siphoner is going to work, and the menace on those really proving itself to be quite valuable here.
Yep, and now here comes Dread Wanderer sideways, very Jerry Thompson-esque. As we see the Vicious Conquistadors going into McMahon's hand. Off camera, we recorded a couple of Chris McMahon matches earlier today that we haven't really just had a chance to get to because the pace of play has been so fast. But he has been doing some brutal things to opponents. One of our life bar operators down in the feature match area talked to us about Chris McMahon against Paul Dean. Said it was one of the most unfair 2-0 matches he'd seen in a very long time. Chris McMahon just constantly doing things like fatal pushing his own creature in order to then have enough ability to bring Dread Wanderers back, and all sorts of chicanery and shenanigans, which has led Chris McMahon to be still in contention for the top 8 here against a Pro Tour champion in Ari Lax.
Chris has drawn quite a few cards already off these Glint Sleeve Siphoners.
Yeah.
Just gaining a huge advantage. And there we see the interaction I talked about earlier where Chris is able to play a Bone Picker for a single mana because he traded off that creature. And
that was, thanks very much for playing, Ari Lax. Pro Tour champion, well, I don't care. And something else I don't care about is I'm not interested in Game 2. I already know what happens. So I'm going to leave you, Jacob Van Lunen, to do the opening turns. And then, momentarily, it'll be BDM once more.
so here on the first turn, we see a Dread Wanderer get picked off by a Magma Spray by Ari Lax. And Magma Spray is a card that Ari failed to draw in the first game there, but a super important card in a matchup like this. If he had had that Magma Spray, I think we would have seen a much different game.
Absolutely. This deck from Chris Mcmahon looks really sweet.
A harsh scrutiny there from Chris Mcmahon, and that's going to take a Glory Bringer out of Ari Lax's hand. One problem with sideboarding in cards like Harsh Scrutiny, however, is they are not aggressive, and when you're playing against when you're playing a deck like Chris's, you really want all of your cards to be able to do proactive things.
All right, so you want to write down my hand? You got it? And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. I got it. I got it.
I like that. I like the casualness of it.
Four cards in hand for Chris McMahon. Scrap Heap Scrounger on the battlefield. And it is going to be facing off against Chandra, Torch of Defiance, Magma Spray. Wow, this is a card that Ari Lax is very happy to see, as you mentioned earlier. And those are main deck, too, right? He's got 4 of them main deck. And they have taken out 2 big threats, recurring threats.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why Magma Spray is so good right now in Standard is because there are cards like, Scrap Heap Scrounger, and there are cards that have Eternalize, Champion of Wits, Earthshaker Kenra, Resilient Kenra. These are all things that we're seeing a lot of in Standard right now, and the ability to exile those cards is really important. It can also team up with another removal spell and permanently get rid of something like the Scarab God, which is super important right now.
6 loyalty on Chandra Torture Defiance. Do we have Vraska's Contempt in the list here for Christopher McMahon?
We do not. Chris McMahon, however, his plan is to just play a creature, activate that Aethersphere Harvester, and start attacking. However, if Ari does have a removal spell here for the Aethersphere Harvester, this is not going to work out well at all for Chris McMahon.
It certainly looks body language-wise like Ari does. And he's got an Abrade. Abrade takes it down. Bone Picker was the play. Full price Bone Picker.
And that's not the kind of Bone Picker you want. A 3-power flyer with 4 mana. Not quite the constructed all-star that a 1 mana 3-power flyer
Is that a
could
night
be.
market lookout?
It looks like it is.
Wow. All the 1-drops have come to play. How many lands does this deck play? I'm just curious.
I think
Plays
it's 19. Yeah.
Just 19 lands.
And this is another deck that performed quite well in the first week of the new standard and kind of fell out of favor. And that's kind of a theme we've seen over the course of this weekend. Is a lot of these decks that people thought might be good are proving themselves to be pretty darn good.
Oh, that's not Night Market Lookout. That was, I'm sorry.
Isn't it? Those two there?
What did he... I thought it was. I can't really... The Night Market Lookout is...
Oh, it's a 4th Bridge Prowler.
There you
right?
go. Yes.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. Oh, those came in out of the sideboard. There's just 2 of those. And that did -1/-1 on the Merfolk Branchwalker.
Yeah, kind of a cool card there.
If near Deadlands, gets the Branchwalker out of the way. Creature. Oh,
well.
Hello, Glorybringer.
That's a nice one to flip up off your Chandra Torture Defiance. So now Ari can exert this, deal with one of these 4th Bridge Prowlers, get in for 4 damage, and leave himself with a 4-power flying body that kills creatures at will.
But Chris McMahon's been sitting on a walk the plank for some time. The Braid's going to take out the other creature and protect his Chandra. Goes up. He gets Chris down to 10 with a land. Here's an Aethersphere Harvester for Chris McMahon. He's just got to find a crew. It's sitting there on the lot. Just wants someone to buy it. Oh, how about a cast out off the top?
That'll work just fine. And Ari doesn't need to worry about any sort of haste creature. Deal with the Chandra.
And here you see Harsh Scrutiny. Harsh Scrutiny is going to reveal Ixalan's Binding and Cast Out in hand for Ari Lax. He's about to go to 7 on Chandra. He's going to be able to ultimate it next turn. And that's basically what happened. So let's see game 3 here between Ari Lax and Chris McMahon. And Dread Wanderer is the play for Chris right out of the gate. Will the Magma Sprays come to play for Ari Lax? That was the big difference. I see one in hand, and it's immediately going to take out the Dread Wanderer. And Glint Sleeve Siphoner comes down for McMahon on turn 2.
Yeah, Ari last game was able to have the inexpensive removal spells he needed to really hold Chris at bay, and then we watched Chandra Torture Defiance just take the game over. Chris McMahon, to do well in a matchup like this, he really needs to rely on Ari not drawing too many removal spells. And I think it's also important for Chris to really make his deck as threat-heavy as possible, because
he's going to lead off this turn with a Duress here. And he's going to see Thopter Arrest, 3 lands, 2 Glory Bringers. Chris is like, where are my harsh scrutinies?
And Ari, no
There's a
plays
vicious
coming up.
Conquistador. Yeah, he's got nothing going on for the next few turns.
He had a cycle there on the end step, so that's at least going to allow him to take a look at those top 2 cards. But still nothing there, and just a Rootbound Crag, so Chris McMahon able to draw an extra card there with the Glint Sleeve Siphoner. That tells us that Ari does not have an answer here. And I doubt we're going to be seeing much from Ari until the 5th turn when a Parade of Dragons begins.
There's another Siphoner. So that means he's going to get to draw another card. All right, there's Ixalan's Binding. It's going to take out 1 Siphoner, prevent any additional Siphoners from being cast. But there's already 1 there. And you see Chris McMahon drawing 2 cards a turn here. Gets in. That's going to drop Ari to 10. Then there's either the 4th Bridge Prowler or the 9th.
Yeah, I believe that one's the Night Market Lookout.
All right, here's Glorybringer. It is going to exert and shoot the Glint Sleeve Siphoner. Boy, this really feels like this is a huge turning point here for Ari Lax, who's going to have another Glorybringer next turn. No, that was the Night Market Lookout that time. So if near Deadlands, make your Glorybringer a little worse. Yeah. Ari plays another Glorybringer.
And Glorybringer is really good in this matchup.
Wow. Ari's down to 4.
But it
There's
looks
a
like he's
Servant of the
stabilized.
Conduit. There's a Fatal Push in hand. Fatal Push, attack for 2, drop you to 2. He's got another Fatal Push. Can Ari afford to attack? He has to. He exerts, kills the Vicious Conquistador. It's the first time a Glorybringer has ever killed a Vicious Conquistador, I'm sure.
In the history of the game.
Yes. And it's going to happen twice, man.
It's not going to surprise me.
All right, there's a Magma Spray. Gets in. Oh, no. The Dragons have defeated the Vampires. Ari Lax stays alive. 12-2. Chris McMahon, that deck seems super cool.
The deck's very exciting.
It's been around for a while, but it's there's a lot of 1-drops. Only plays 19 lands. Something that might be kind of cool to play around with in this new standard format. See if you can figure out a way to beat a Glorybringer ever.
Yeah, I think maybe the plan is to have less spot removal, have less cards like Fatal Push, have less like interactive cards where you're trying to pick apart your opponent's hand, and instead just post board have your deck be as many threats as possible when you're playing against a deck like that.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was pretty cool to watch. Ari Lax going to be playing for top 8 next round here at Grand Prix Memphis. Don't go anywhere. We've got some more Magic coming up, but first we've got a couple of quick messages.
Head down to your local store and buy a box of Rivals of Ixalan to receive an Alt Art Foil Rare Captain's Hook. Limit 1 per customer. Visit rivalsofixalan.com to find a store.
Somebody made a pitch for Vampire Conquistadors, and that was the very bare bones nugget of Ixalan coming into being. If all you're doing is playing the card game, you're seeing that world through a bunch of tiny little windows. The art book is a view into who these characters are, what they're doing here, how these cultures fit together.
I mean, I'm super proud of this world. James and I both worked on it really closely, so I think it's going to be amazing, and I think once it finally hits, the fans are going to be blown away.
Back to the booth here at GP Memphis. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. That's Reed Duke. We're happy to have you along for Standard here in Tennessee. Reed, we just had the standings handed to us and a little bit of news about what's going on at the top tables. Can you break it down for us?
Okay, so we are in the excuse me. So we are in the last round of Swiss, which means after this round we'll be cutting to our top 8. We believe we know some of the players in the top 8 already. We have word that the 2 highest standing tables 1 and 2, intentionally drew. So that means that Blake Miller, Aaron Barrich, and Eric Froelich will be in the top 8. Those players are mathematically locked.
Awesome.
And the 4th player that drew, Matthew Kling, he was our last undefeated player a few rounds ago. He is exceedingly likely to make the top 8. A lot would have to go wrong for him to get past.
Okay, so he's going to have the equal number of match points needed to get